All right. Hi, guys. Give everyone some time here to trickle in and we'll get started. Just a couple minutes here. All right. So, good afternoon and welcome to Windows 11, an introduction. I am one of your co-hosts, Jacob Heath. I am an account manager here at CompuWorks. I just want to go over a few pieces of etiquette before we get going here. For anyone that might have a question, below in the Zoom call, there is a Q&A button where you can enter any questions and we'll either answer them live or we can type them in. We'll get an answer to you. We'll try and get as many done during the call as possible, but at the end of the call, we'll save some time there to answer some questions that went unanswered. We'll follow up. We typically follow up with a survey. We like to get some feedback on how you enjoyed the webinar. So we'll send one. Usually it comes about a day after to your email inbox, and we really appreciate that feedback. Before I go, be sure to check out our next webinar coming up on the 15th of November. And that's going to be same time, 1:30, and that is Google Workspace. So that's certainly going to be helpful for those of you who are on the Google side. And I want to introduce to you as well our co-founding partner, Alan Bauman.
Thanks, Jacob. Super happy to be talking about this topic today. It's interesting. As a matter of fact, I was talking with Joe Lynn here a little bit before the call, and just looking at some of the adoption rates for Windows 11, and really seeing the reality that a lot of people haven't yet made this switch. I think it was the stat that I saw was something like 11% of the desktop PCs were running Windows 11. And so the vast majority of folks out there are still running Windows 10. We're going to have a little poll here to just see what you guys are doing. But I think that's pretty typical of operating systems. A lot of times they get upgraded when people upgrade their PCs rather than, by a conscious effort. So interested to see what Windows 11 has to offer, and I'm sure you guys are too. And happy as always to have Jolynn Reen here today. She has become a real staple here for these monthly webinars, and for good reason. She always delivers a great session, and we're happy to have her here again today. I should go through her accolades. You probably all have these memorized by now, but Jolynn's a certified trainer, a master Microsoft instructor, lots and lots of years of experience, and always does a terrific job. So happy to have you here, Jolynn.
Perfect. Thank you, Alan. Thank you, Jacob. So
All
welcome
right,
everybody to Windows.
I'm going to just launch into the quick poll. Sorry, Jolynn. I know this is
yep.
a little bit off the script here, but we have just this quick poll. I'm going to see if my Zoom webinar chops are up to speed. So you should be seeing this poll right now. And it's just, one simple question. How do you use Windows 10 or 11? Either you currently use it, you use Windows 10, or you use something other than that. All right, and so people a second here to answer that. All right, and yeah, no surprise here. So we've got 13% of you are running Windows 11, which is pretty darn close to the adoption that I guess Microsoft is seeing across the universe. 88% of you are running Windows 10. And then actually there's nobody running older operating systems. So good for you that you've kept pace. So interesting, but all right. All yours, Jolynn.
Sounds good. So welcome everybody. As Alan said, this is a topic of Windows 11. And as we see, a lot of people haven't upgraded yet to Windows 11. A lot of people are staying on the Windows 10 operating system, which we were just talking prior to the session about, Windows 10 has actually been around for quite a while. There hasn't been an upgrade in probably about 6-7 years for the Windows. So just so everybody understands, Windows is your operating system. It's not an app like we have with Excel and Microsoft Teams and Outlook and those kind of things. It's really the brains behind what's running your computer. So it's what we use when we turn on the computer. It checks everything to make sure everything is working correctly. It will give you errors if there's any problems, hardware wise or software wise. So it's a very important part of using your PC. So when it comes to a different version of Windows, we want to think about, why should I really upgrade? What's the benefit of me upgrading? And one of the things that I found right away when I purchased a new laptop and it came with Windows 11 was it is integrating what we have with our Microsoft apps. A lot of the same features are carried over in Windows 11. So the transition from going from one application to your operating system is much smoother of a transition. It's going to give you some of the same features that we had in Windows 10, but it has some enhanced features and it has some brand new features. So it really kind of is organizing your information the way that we would be organizing things in our other apps. So I'm really excited about this app, this new operating system. And I haven't upgraded all of my laptops yet. I will eventually, but I still do a little training on Windows 10. So I have to make sure that I keep some of them on that operating system. But the one that I use on a regular basis, the one that you're actually seeing today, is my Windows 11. And just so you know which version I'm using Windows 11 Pro. So I'm using the business version, not the home version. Not that there's going to be much difference between what you're seeing here today, but so as you can see, when I'm showing you my desktop, that works just the same as it always did. You can have shortcuts, you can have files saved to your desktop, you have your recycle bin. You, of course, can customize your desktop just like you always could before. I actually had a picture of my granddaughter as my desktop prior to the session and I switched it over. So we get all those same features that we've always had and that we've always loved in Windows. So when I right click on the desktop, I do get that pop-up menu, but you're going to notice that the shortcut, well, I should say the icons to the features are the same icons that you would see everywhere else in your applications. So it's really kind of that transition into your Microsoft 365 apps that everything is starting to look the same and work the same. So I really like that. So you're really seeing a lot of the same features as you had, but some things are definitely enhanced and some things might be a little bit of a shock to some people. And the first thing is that you will probably notice the taskbar. So down at the bottom, just in case you weren't familiar with what the name of this is, you'll see your taskbar at the bottom. In Windows 10 and prior to that, we had the start menu located at the bottom left of the screen. That has now been moved, so everything is central. So we have a centered start menu. So all of your icons are on the center. It leaves room, and it took me a while to get used to this, and I'm sure that will happen to you once you upgrade as well, but I will show you how you can change it if you needed to. I personally like it, so don't change it right away. Give yourself some time using this new look before you decide that you want to change it, because there's reasons that they did this. It gives us actually more room for other things on the sides, which I'll get to in just a minute. So the start icon is just like the icon that we've always had. It's going to give you a pop-up menu. The pop-up menu is going to be a little bit different, of course. So we'll get to kind of how that all works and how it's going to be beneficial for you. It's this whole program, this whole operating system, this Windows 11 is really giving us more efficiencies than we've ever had in an operating system before. The easy to use features, the familiarity with going from one place to another It just all makes sense now. So back in Windows 10, when you were looking at your desktop, I have more icons on my desktop right now than I've ever had, because normally I don't keep a lot of things on my desktop because I don't usually look at my desktop. I don't go to my desktop to use things. I don't go there to open something. I use my taskbar. So we'll talk about different ways to kind of use that taskbar to navigate different things, of course, depending on what it is that you're doing. So when you look at my taskbar, you're going to see some similar icons that we've had in the past, like the Microsoft Store. So the Microsoft Store is the same. The icon looks a little bit different. It's actually a darker blue. It used to be white. No big difference for that. It's still going to give you access to other apps that you can add if you wanted to. Of course, some of these you do have to pay for. So if you're on your work computer, you may want to consider that. But it is just like the older versions of Windows where you do get that Microsoft Store. I'm not going to worry about spending much time on that. I just wanted to mention the fact that, yes, we still do have that. But what else you're going to see is a little bit different on a few different things. The integration with other apps is available through Windows 11, including Microsoft Teams. So when I look at the taskbar, I have an icon for chat. As I hesitate, it looks like a call out with a video camera in it. That is actually a chat feature that if I click on it, it would actually take me into a chat window, but this is really for a personal version. This is for a personal version of Microsoft Teams, just so you know. So I personally don't use it that way because I'm not using a personal version of Teams. I use Microsoft Teams on the business side. So just so you know, you do have that icon though, if that's something that you would like to use. Now, there is also an icon for, it's the magnifying glass. So instead of having that big space taken up on your taskbar for type here to search, we don't have that anymore. That has been condensed because we have a different way of searching, and searching allows you to search everywhere. So I'll demonstrate how that works as well here in our session today. So as I'm just kind of identifying different icons that you see going across, there's a couple that will be different than what we had in Windows 10, or shall I say enhanced, especially the icon. It looks like two screens, which is perfect for what exactly it is. We used to have an icon called Task View. Don't know if anybody ever really used that in Windows 10 or not. Alan and Jacob, did you happen to use it back in Windows 10, the task view?
I did not.
I
Nope.
can't say I have, no.
I was going to say, every time I look online and I look to see how many, when I look at different blogs and stuff for who uses certain features, people really weren't using that task view, taking advantage of what it was for. So they redesigned it. And now we have very quick and very easy, we can have two different desktops. So we can actually name the desktops. So this is how I use this. So when I hesitate my mouse on the icon for the desktops, it looks like two windows because of the fact that we can add multiple desktops, meaning you can have different apps open in each desktop. So if I'm working on a specific project and I have different programs that I'm actually working with on that project, I can do that in a different desktop instead of having a million things open in one desktop. And then it's kind of hard to get back and forth in between things. It's much smoother if I just use a separate desktop. Let me show you. So right now, if I click on this icon for new desktop, I now have two desktops. I could continue to add additional desktops. You can see the first one is called desktop 1. If I right click on it, I can rename it. I could choose a different background for it. So I'll click rename. So I'm going to name this current. I'll just call it current. So that's my current desktop. Then I just press enter after I rename it. I could do the same thing with my desktop 2. Right click on that window, left click on rename and give that a name. So if there's a specific project that I'm working on right now, I'll just call it project 1 as an example. I could have all my apps open in that specific desktop. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this project 1. When I click on this project 1, I didn't point this out prior to, but the apps that I had open in the other window are not open here in this desktop. So if I had specific things that I wanted to open now here in desktop project 1, I would be able to do so. So if I want to open up an internet browser, I'll bring my internet browser over. I'm just going to minimize it back down, but just so you can see, I can open up several different apps. So let me open up an Excel file. So just so you can see, I can have lots of different things open. So I'll just open up this inventory template. So these are all going to be a part of this specific desktop. So I have all these different files open. If I go back to the icon on the taskbar for my multiple desktops, I could go back to current. And if I go back to current, I have different things that are actively open. Of course, I'm in Zoom, so I have that open. I also have a PowerPoint open. I have a settings tab open. I have a Windows document open. I have Outlook open. I have Excel open. I have a lot of different things that are open just in this desktop. So as you can see, you can have multiple desktops to be working from that don't need to be the same things and have multiple things open on one window. So give it a try. It's something that you won't know if it's something you want to use until you try it. So highly recommend giving it a try.
Well, I just have to
But-
say, Jolene, this is already
Yes.
a good reason to like think about making a switch. What a great feature this is. And, you know, I'm thinking specifically of an application. I mean, so many of us have multiple displays, and it's almost like we're trying to replicate this with these multiple screens. And then you take your laptop and you go on the road and you're in a hotel room and you've got the one tiny laptop screen, and it just feels like, you know, you're fighting with one hand tied behind your back. And so
Exactly.
what a great solution for that problem.
It really is.
I agree. And I actually, I think this is a game changer. I have a quick question on this.
Yes.
So not that I think I know the answer to this, but will this change if you save something to your desktop? Is that going to affect it in any way? It looks like the icons appear on both desktops.
The icons
anyways,
appear on both.
Okay.
So the
no,
physical desktop is the same. It's really
Right.
based on the apps that you're actively working with.
okay.
Isn't that awesome?
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yep.
It really
That's
wasn't. It was harder to use and more complicated in Windows 10.
Hmm.
It was all these open things. It was not user friendly. It is extremely easy to use now. Can't live without it now. I really like it. And Alan, what you said about traveling and being in hotels and different things, that is where I use it a lot, because I don't always have my monitor with me, my external monitor that I'm connecting to, and we have all these windows open. We have sometimes so many things open because, yes, we do multitask, even though in project management, they say, focus on one thing at a time and get it done. We are multitaskers. So having that ability of having multiple desktops, just for me, keeps me focused on what I'm working on. But if I need to jump back to something else, because I get a chat or whatever come through that somebody has a question on something else, it takes me not even a second to really jump back to that screen where I have all those open windows as well. Okay. So great feature. I'm going to go back to current, by the way. So when I'm looking at my current, as I said, I have a lot of different windows open. Just like with prior versions of Microsoft Windows, you can always pin things to the taskbar. So highly recommend doing that, as opposed to having the shortcut icons to a program on your desktop. Because of course, we open our windows, we're covering up our desktop anyway. So I personally don't use my desktop to access a program at all, a app. So the ones that I use the most are the saved pinned items that I have in my taskbar, just like we've always had. So of course I have my default internet browser, my Microsoft Edge. I also have Microsoft Teams pinned. I of course have access to my File Explorer, but of course I'll come back to that. I have 2 different mail programs that I'm using. I also of course have my Excel I have my Outlook. I also, because I do a lot of screen clipping, I use both Snagit and Snipping tool. So I actually have that pinned as well. So as you can see, the other open apps will be an icon as well. Like I have settings open right now. I have PowerPoint open, which is not pinned. And I also have, of course, Zoom, which is not pinned. So at the end of the taskbar is where your open icons or your open apps will be. But of course, wherever your current apps are pinned at, that's where they stay. They don't all move to the end. But of course, it's very easy to rearrange them. As a matter of fact, I've done it by mistake before. I went to click on something and I ended up clicking and dragging instead. So if I want to rearrange my icons on the taskbar, I just click and drag and move them where I want them to go. You want to put them in an order that makes it easier for you to get to the things that you want to have. But I don't clutter my taskbar with pinned items. I only have items that are pinned that I use every day, because it's very easy to get back to a program that we want to open. So like PowerPoint, I use it regularly, but I didn't feel it was enough. I don't use it regularly enough to pin it to my taskbar. So it makes it harder to get to things if we have too many things pinned on the taskbar. But I want to talk more about the right-hand side of the taskbar. You'll hear it be called different names. It's always been called the notifications area, your system tray, going from kind of previous versions of Windows, whatever you want to call that area. It holds access to different information, of course, just like it always did before. What has changed, which I think just makes huge sense, is when you go to your, so once again, if Alan and I are traveling and we are going to be connecting to different internets, we are at a hotel and we're connecting to their internet site or whatever the case might be, you have your internet icon. When you click on your internet icon, you are not just getting access to your internet. You're actually getting access to several tools all at once. We used to go to the the notifications area to get access to some of these, or we had to open things separately. Now everything is compiled into one simple window. But the one thing that I want to caution you on is if you go to connect to an internet, do not click on the icon. Do not click on the icon, which I will not do right now because it will disconnect my internet connection. So the icon is for turning it off. The arrow is where you can go to see what local internet connections you actually have and see what you are currently connected to. Okay. You can also, of course, access your Wi-Fi settings, which will take you into your computer settings. So we have quick, easy access to that. Now, if I want to jump back to that window, because I looked at all my connections and I decide I want to jump back, I just do my back arrow to get back to the main menu again. Because if I want to turn on or turn off my Bluetooth, my airplane mode, because I'm going to get on a plane, I can get into my battery saving, accessibility options, and we have our brightness. So of course you understand the brightness that we've always had with controlling the brightness of our screen. Sometimes that does need to be adjusted, or your sound. Sound is available here as well. So we can do our sound bar. We can manage the commands that we're seeing by going into settings as well. So we have several places to access your computer settings. So I won't do it here. I'll come back to that in just a few minutes. But also notice that I'm seeing my battery. So the battery for my computer, which I could tell that is plugged in and it was at 78%. So I don't really need to individually go to these. I can actually turn them off if I wanted to. I don't even need all of these icons. I personally like to see them because I know the status just by looking at them. So I do keep them turned on, but it is something that you could control, of course. We can turn on and turn off things just like we always could on the taskbar. Now, also what you're going to see on the taskbar, of course, when you are in a meeting like we're in right now, I can actually see my microphone icon. And you can see when I hesitate on it, it says apps using your microphone. I'm using Zoom right now, so Zoom is using my microphone on my computer. I can actually mute myself and unmute myself by clicking on that icon. So I like having that. It appears automatically when you are in an online session. So if you're in Teams and you're in a meeting, you're in WebEx, whatever the case would be, the microphone is accessible to you in that notifications area. You do get the pop-up menu, that pop-up window to show other icons, just like you always did in Windows 10. So things that are running in the background, of course, you're going to see those and have access to them directly from that menu. So it's not spreading them all across the taskbar to take up all that space. It does give you the pop-up so that you have access to things from there. So if you need to make any changes to your OneDrive, or you want to make a quick note in your OneNote notebook, anything like that, you have access to those icons of the apps that are running in the background. Okay. That's really not anything new. That's something that we have had for a very, very long time. But one thing else that on this right-hand side that has changed is on the right-hand side, you can see that I have a circle with a 1 in it. Very consistent for all of your other apps, especially if you're a Teams user. We do a lot of circles, and the circle has a number in it to let you know how many new items you have. So that consistency with the other Microsoft apps, what we used to have before was a call out icon for our notifications. So back in Windows 10, the icon at the bottom right actually gave you a pop-up menu with different settings, and it gave you any notifications that your computer had. If I go to the circle on the right for my notifications, I can see it tells me that I have one new notification. When I pop it up, it gives me 2 separate windows. What I'm actually seeing at the top is the actual notifications. And the notifications are related to several different programs. If there's a Windows update and things like that, I would also see those. But I'm getting a notification from my Adobe Acrobat because I had a signed document going back and forth. But I also have access to my calendar from here. And as you can see, I can go to any date on the calendar. This is a scroll. You really can see any of the dates on the calendar, or up at the top, you can click on the drop down to shrink that calendar up and see more of your notifications window. Of course, just like we had in the other notifications, when you're done looking at your notifications, you can clear all to get rid of those notifications out of that window. Okay. Now, if I click again, it's going to hide the calendar because I had shrunk the calendar up. I do want to talk about the calendar itself. So, by the way, I don't have any new notifications or any notifications because I just cleared those. Notice what happened to my circle. My circle with the 1 completely disappeared, because why do I need to see it if I don't have anything in it? So it's not there unless you have something in the notifications. It will tell you if you have something new, but if I've already been in the notifications, the old notifications do stay there unless I clear them out. So once they're all cleared out, the icon completely disappears. So it's pretty cool how that all works together. I like that. But if you go to your actual clock and calendar, of course, it always tells you what your current day is. Because I shrunk it before, it is still minimized. So I'm going to click on the up arrow to maximize it again. So just so you can see, I used this earlier today because I didn't know for sure what day of the week something was on. So I just used the calendar to check that. But I do change my time zone a lot. Every time I'm traveling to a different place, I want to be in that current time zone. So my time zone is Mountain Time right now because that's where I'm located at right now today. But if I right click on the calendar, I have quick, easy access to notification settings. So this is all part of the same thing, the calendar and the notifications are together. So I could access my notification setting, or if I need to adjust my date and time, because we have, of course, daylight savings time coming up, I could change my time zone. It takes me into my settings window for my entire computer, but it takes me, of course, directly to that location of the date and time. So we have quick, easy access to things. Of course, when I'm done, I'll just close it. So it closed my entire settings window. So some things are going to be similar, just enhanced a little bit on the way that they work on that right-hand side. But I want to talk about the start menu. The start menu, and by the way, Ellen will be sharing a handout with everybody. The handout is going to cover everything that I'm talking about, by the way. It's going to cover the taskbar changes, anything to the notifications area, including the start menu. So as I said, everything is by default centered on your taskbar. If I go to the actual start menu, when I click on it, we have 3 different sections technically. It has a search up at the top. It has an apps area where we can pin apps that we go into regularly. So PowerPoint is something that I use regularly. I could pin it. We get recommended. So something that we've recently used, but files and different things like that, they can all be accessed through that recommended. Not only apps, but also recent files. I was just into this project 123 35 minutes ago. I could access it right from here without having to go to the actual app. So it's very similar to kind of what we had before, but it's easier, I think. It took me a little bit to get used to using this, and I think that's going to be the case with everybody. But once you understand it and once you've used it a couple of times, I love it. I have a hard time going back to the Windows 10 pop-up menu. This is so much easier to use. It's more efficient for me. So as you can see, if I'm looking for something specific, if I don't see the icon right away in my pinned category, I can just go to search. Search is going to take you into a more powerful search than you might have thought. As you can see, it says today at Jolynn Reen, because I'm logged in as myself, and I can see different information that I have done, some different files and different things that I was working on. On the left-hand side, I can get into the Paint program, which is still available in Windows. Everybody kind of falls back to that Paint program for one reason or another. I can easily access Snipping Tool if I didn't have it pinned. I can get into some different tips on using Windows. I can get into it getting started. We have quick, easy access to different information in the menu. But otherwise, I'm in my search, and I can just simply search for whatever it is that I'm looking for. So if I start typing an E, it starts to bring up several different things related to the letter E. Up at the top, I have different tabs. So if I want to narrow down what I was looking for, because it was related to an app, it was related to an internet website that I had recently been to, I could choose which tab. Otherwise, if I'm on the All tab, it breaks it down into categories. So the best match is going to be the Excel app. And that's what it's showing on the right-hand side. If I want to unpin it from the taskbar or pin it if it wasn't already pinned, unpin it from the start menu, open the file location, open the file itself or uninstall something, you have access to everything related to that app right there. We don't have to jump through hoops to get to another part in our settings to do things. Everything is convenient. I also could go into File Explorer to look for a file, but otherwise I have my settings that all started with an E. And then if I had any web search results that I had done that had started with an E, it automatically would show those under the web category as well. I love this search. It is so much smarter, and it's related to the same type of intelligence we have with our other search capabilities in our 365. So everything really kind of goes together now. So if I wanted to go to any of these, of course I could, but we don't have to right click on things to have access to whatever we want to do with it. Use the right-hand side of the window instead. Of course, if I change my mind and I don't want to search for something, I can just simply click or press escape to close that window. If I go back to the taskbar down at the bottom and I go to the actual search, which is the magnifying glass, you can see just when I hesitate on it, I can see previous things that I had actually searched for. So it shows me things that I've previously searched for. Otherwise, if I want to just click here to search, I can. We don't have to have that. I swear it's 3 inches long. Okay, 3 inches long for that type here to search back in Windows 10. I thought that was such a waste of space. This to me is just smarter. So as you can see, it takes me directly into the same place that I was before. Okay. So I'll click back off that. I'm going to go back to the start menu again. And from the start menu up at the top, if I don't see an app that I want to access, you can click on the icon at the top for all apps. Then you're going to get your alphabetized list like we had in the other versions of Windows. So as you can see, we can scroll through and see every app based on that alphabetized list. If there's something that I want to go into, of course, all I have to do is click on it and I can automatically open whatever that app happens to be. But if I wanted to pin it to the taskbar, pin it to the start menu, anything like that, I can simply right click on it. So Microsoft Project is something I use regularly. If I want to pin it to start, I could just click on this. Otherwise, I go to the more category and I could actually pin it to the taskbar if I wanted to. Otherwise, of course, I can open the file location and run it as administrator if I was having issues. So I really like this. We don't have to see everything if we don't want to. And we don't have to worry about in Windows 10, when you went to the start menu, remember how you had all those live tiles and different things happening on the right-hand side? The window was this big. We don't have that anymore. It doesn't work quite that same way. They're not combined together. They are now managed separately, which I really like. Now, I'm going to click the back arrow to go back to the menu, the prior menu, the main menu. You're going to see that the recommended area down at the bottom, it's referring to recommended apps or recommended files. So these are apps that I was recently in or recently added as well. But also I see files that I was actively in. If I click on more, it's going to actually show me access to all these files that I had recently been in, or apps that I had recently been in. So it's quick, easy access to a lot of different information in this more intelligent start menu. Now you're probably wondering, how do I restart my computer? How do I shut down my computer? The power button has been moved to the right-hand side of the start menu. So instead of it being right on that pop-up menu there, it's just located over on the right-hand side at the bottom. So you get your same power options that you did before. So it's just at a different location. That only took me one day to, keep in mind where it was. I didn't think it was any big deal for it to be moved to a different location.
I was just going to say that would trip me up for a week. I'd be looking for that power button. Like, how do I turn my computer off?
It doesn't take that much to get used to. I just really love the start menu. I've had people say, oh, I just can't get over that taskbar being centered like that, which I'll talk about how to change that. But I just really like it. Give it a chance. Give the whole thing a chance before. And I say that with every program. When you have new changes to something, try the new changes before you try and put things back to classic mode or, back to the way we used to do things. Give it a chance. There's a reason they're set up this way. Just like with the default settings in any of your apps, there's always a reason we have those default settings. Okay. Now, what I really like also is at the bottom left. So we got this, it's kind of like a separated area down at the bottom. You have your power on the right. You have your actual account on the left. So if I click on my account, I can change my settings. I can sign out. I can switch users, etc. So it's real easy to access information, whatever it is you're looking for. Okay. Now I'm going to go ahead and close that start menu and talk about a couple of other things related to this taskbar before I get into File Explorer. On the left-hand side, you can see that right now where I'm located at in Denver, it's 53 degrees and it's sunny. It knows my location, so it updates all the time. This is where your widgets went. So in Windows 10, when you clicked on your start menu, you got that alphabetized list of all your apps. You had your power choices and all of that on the left-hand side. On the right-hand side, you had all those tiles. And some of those tiles were live tiles. If you remember back to that start menu, not sure if anybody ever took advantage of any of those live tiles at all. I personally didn't go there a lot to those live tiles. I like the new widgets, the way that they work instead. Those live tiles were the ones that they just are automatically updating so you can see them change. You could turn them off and remove tiles and, make tiles a different size and all of that. Wow, that was kind of crazy on doing all that organization of those tiles. Personally, I didn't do much of that because I thought it was too hard to do. So what we have now is if I take my mouse to the left-hand side and I hesitate on the weather, which I have by default at the bottom, it pops up my widgets. So what you're going to see is I have access to news, which I can close. I can put whatever widgets I want here, but the ones that I'm actually seeing, which are very handy for me, is my Outlook calendar. Then I'm actually seeing my task list. So these are widgets that I really like to have accessible. It's also giving me my running clock up at the top. Down at the bottom, I can click on See More. If I click on See More, it's going to actually take me to the internet. So See More takes you into the actual internet to see an overview of everything that you had going on in that little widgets window. Okay. Now, I'm just going to leave that and shrink that back down, minimize it down. And I'm going to go back to the widgets for a second. Up at the top of the right-hand side of the widgets window, which by the way, you have a scroll bar on the right-hand side, but at the top, you're going to see that you have a plus sign. If you click the plus sign, you can choose the widgets that you would like to add in and make any adjustments. I'm not going to add any or change any, but just so you see that you could do that. If I don't want a specific widget. So right now I can see I've got Insider and then I've got Business Insider. If I don't want to see this tile, this window, I can click on the X to close it. Okay. So we can always change what we're seeing. I love this at a glance look at what I want to see. This is something that you would customize for what do you want to see on a regular basis. So keep in mind, you can be adding and removing widgets to have it be whatever you want it to be. Okay. So enough about the taskbar and talking a little bit about the desktop, which works the same as it always did. I want to talk a little bit on the File Explorer side of things. If you go to your icon down at the bottom for your File Explorer, everybody loves File Explorer because, of course, you can explore all the files that are located on your computer, whether they're coming from OneDrive, they're on your C drive, they're on a network drive, wherever your files are stored. Of course, we get a easy access to pinning things. So if we kind of talk about the differences first, when you went into, I didn't mean to chuckle. I do like this new version much better than the old version. But what you would see before is the full ribbon on the top of the File Explorer, where you would have the tabs going across. Well, that's been changing in our 365 apps, where we have more of a condensed menu now. And that's exactly what you're seeing here in File Explorer. So if I look at my menu choices going across the top, I could create something new. So if I'm in my Documents folder and I want to create something new, I just go to New and tell it what I want to create. Just like you would do in any of your other apps. I could create a new document. So if I want to create a new database, I want to create a new PowerPoint, a Microsoft project file, I can see that I can create anything from this dropdown, which is fantastic. Also, from the menu, of course, when you select a specific file or you select a folder, you will have access to your cut, copy, and paste commands. You also will see that you have your delete icon, you have sorting capabilities, but I think one of the big things is the view. Everybody likes to change the view of how you're looking at things in File Explorer. You do, of course, get that same access. We don't have to go to the View tab, though, to do it. You know, in the Windows 10, we had to actually switch to a tab to have access to the things that we use regularly. I use my View all the time, so I'm really happy to have that as at the top of my menu now. I personally use the Preview pane. So when I hesitate on Show, I can choose what it is that I want to see. So the Show category, I can see the navigation pane. If I wanted to see a details pane, I could turn that on. We could turn on and turn off exactly what you want to see or not see. So if I want to see the file name extensions, etc., I can see what I want. I personally use that preview pane a lot because I want to be able to go to a file, click on it, and be able to see exactly what I have in that file. So if I go to a specific file and I click on it, I get my preview pane on the right-hand side, which I absolutely love. Yes, we did have that capability back in Windows 10. It was just a little bit harder to access it. Now it's just a clean menu at the top and makes it so much easier. So a couple of other things. Of course, the look and feel of it is a little bit different. It's more of the modernized look than we had back in Windows 10. But when I go to the menu up at the top and I click on the dot, 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 which of course, you know, in any of your Microsoft apps, when you're in any program now, you see the dots menu. So of course, if I click on the dots menu, you're going to see that I have several choices here as well. So it's more condensed and it just makes more sense to me on how everything works in File Explorer. I use File Explorer in and out every day. I probably don't even close it. I usually open it at the beginning of the day as I open Outlook and I open up Teams. I'm usually in File Explorer as well. And it took me a little bit to get used to where everything was. But now that I am into here, I absolutely love it. It works wonderful. I, of course, have access to my OneDrive. So if I need to see my status of any of my files, I need to share something. We, of course, do have that capability of right-clicking on a file. This is where you're going to see some changes here in File Explorer. When I right-click on a folder or a file, you're going to see a pop-up menu related to that item. This happens to be in my OneDrive, so I'm seeing some things like, you know, keeping it on my desktop, freeing up space, or actually opening it in OneDrive. But what you're going to see is typical things like pinning it to your quick access, which we've always had. But up at the top, I'm seeing my cut, copy, and paste commands. So, and because I am in OneDrive, I have my share as well. The consistency of the icons is across the board. We don't have to worry about it. Everything is in the same locations. Everything looks the same now, which is wonderful. We even have the ability now to copy the path very quickly and easily. Before it was a little bit harder to find that feature, but we can copy the actual path for a file or a folder as well. So great choices, depending on, of course, what it is that you're looking for. You still have your search capability up at the top right. It will search your current folder just like it always did. So we're not missing anything that we used to have. Things are just redesigned. Okay. Enough about File Explorer. I just encourage you to play around in there, see what your features are. I really like it. I like the consistency of everything being the same. I go from an app into this and everything's the same. But I want to talk about multiple windows. So introduced back in Windows 10 was the ability to snap windows. We can still do that, but we also have the capability now of doing what are referred to as groups of windows. And we can have it automatically choose the size. So back in Windows 10, we could have snaps where we can snap a window to the left. And let me show you how that still works today, which, by the way, I just grabbed the title bar of my window. I don't know if you use these features or not, but if I want to restore my window, I don't go to the top right. I just drag it off the top, and now it's a restored window. In Windows 10, we were introduced with the snap where I could slide the window to the side, and you could see that silhouette around my window. I could release my mouse and it snaps it there. I only have one other thing open right now, so I could click on that icon and it will automatically snap that to the other side. That's not new. What is new, though, is let me go ahead and maximize these windows. And I actually want to bring another, I'm going to bring another file into the situation here. Let me bring this one in. And let me go back and I'm going to make sure all my windows are maximized again. I have all these weird things open. Sorry about that. But when we want to see more than one thing in a window together, in the snap with Windows 10, we have the two, which was great. I still use that pretty much every day. But in any window, if you hesitate on the maximize, I should say the maximize or restore window, you're going to get a drop down of different outline choices. So do I want to have one big window on the left and then two smaller ones on the right? Do I want to have 4 small windows? You know, what layout do you really want? So let's say that I want this Excel file to be a small window at the top right. I can hesitate on the square for the group of the layout as to which side do I want my open window to go to. So I want it at the top right, so I'm going to click that little square there, and it automatically puts that window in that layout. I can then choose, what do I want for the right-hand side, for the big side? Maybe I want that to be my Internet Explorer, not my Internet Explorer, my Microsoft Edge. So my internet browser. It's looking at all of my open windows and it's filling that layout space. So maybe I want my Word document to be the smaller right-hand side. So we can actually keep these windows in this organization. If I have other things open and I want them to be parts of a different group of windows, I can put those in a different group of windows. So maybe I want my Outlook. So if I go back to Outlook, right now it's maximized. If I go back to that icon at the top, maybe I want it to be bigger on the left and something else be smaller on the right. I can click on that and it's automatically going to put that window on the right-hand side and it's bigger. What do I want on the right-hand side? So maybe I want my Microsoft Teams to be open on the right. So now I have two different groups of snapped windows in these separate layouts, which is pretty cool that we can do that. If I go back to the internet icon, it shows me that window in that size that I had it before. It shows me that window in that size I had it before. So I could go back to any of my other windows individually if I wanted to. But let me hesitate back here on my icon for Excel. Here's my group of windows. If I want to go back to that group where I put them in a different layout, I can click on that and it takes me directly back to that group. So we can maximize them all back out and not have them be in a group together. But otherwise, we can have these different groups that we can go back and forth in between. I really like this. My monitor is a little bit small for this. The one that I'm using right now, I don't usually do 4 separate windows. But if I have a bigger monitor, my laptop is really tiny. But on a bigger monitor, I absolutely love this because I'm a multitasker. I need to see multiple things at once. So having that flexibility of snapping these windows into different layouts sold me on Windows 11. Just the fact that I could do this because I need to see multiple things at once. And in the old days when we had to resize our windows and stuff, that was a nightmare. And it didn't keep them together. They were still separate windows. Here we can navigate back and forth in between our different groups. Okay. Well, that was all I wanted to cover with you here today on Windows 11. Alan or Jacob, did we see any questions come through from the audience today?
I don't think we have a question yet, but we have a minute or two if people wanted to try to get something in there. I have a question for you. It was really the first thing you talked about on the chat, the personal chat versus the Teams chat. And can you explain a little bit more about how you would use that? In other words, would you ever use a personal chat to have less formal conversations with maybe friends or family or somebody that sort of listens? Explain sort of the use case for that.
So if you are, and exactly like you were saying, if you want to be communicating, and it even says friends and family, because it's the personal version of Microsoft Teams, this is the free version. So you're limited on your capabilities with this version of Microsoft Teams. But if you want to use it, all you have to do is get started on it. And the get started would then basically install it. And then you can set it up for who you want to chat with. So if I want to be chatting with my husband on his computer in a different state or whatever, I have that flexibility of being able to do that. To be honest with you though, on my work computer, I don't like having that there. I would prefer that I could configure it, which as of today, we cannot. I can't configure it to go to my business version of Teams. It's personal only.
Okay.
The only reason I've kept it as an icon is for training purposes.
Right. And so, and how would you connect with those people? Would they have to have a 365 account, or is there some other way, just any old email account? Or
all they have to do is download the free version of Teams. which
Mhm.
they just go to the internet and do so.
Yep.
Of course, if they have Windows 11, it will be here automatically, even in the home version, not just the work version, the pro version.
Got it. All right. Well, thank you for that. And I do not see any other questions. So as usual, you've been very thorough. Everybody's been busy taking notes, I'm sure. Yeah, so Jacob, you want to talk a little bit about the upcoming sessions we have?
Yeah, so coming up, like I mentioned earlier, Google Workspace, which is going to be a great webinar. A lot of people use Google Workspace for a multitude of different things. So that'll be something interesting to get into. And as you can see, November and December, the webinars are going to be earlier on in the month. There's, of course, holidays at the end of both months. So in December, we've got Microsoft bookings. And that'll be something that is going to be new to me as well. Using a little bit of Microsoft's scheduling tool there and getting familiar. So just another app you can integrate into Windows there. It'll be a good help. And then to start the new year off, we've got governance of teams in SharePoint. So again, a great webinar. A lot of people are transitioning to a fully cloud-based environment. So that governance of teams in SharePoint is going to be, a centerpiece. And so that's definitely something you want to check out if that's something that you and your team are looking to do too.
Yeah, I thanks, Jacob, for also pointing out the change in schedule here for November and December. But yeah, the idea of governance of teams in SharePoint is really, really critical, especially when you're launching into that world maybe for the first time. It just pays dividends to just get started on the right path up front and think about who can create a team. Why should we create a team? What's the difference between a team and a channel? Who has the ability to make modifications? How do we track all that stuff? And it's very powerful, and there's a million ways to do it, and most of them are wrong or less efficient than they could be. So this is great stuff, and I would encourage any of you that are in that process of thinking about adopting 365 to think about coming to this.
Well, and can I say one thing with that too,
Yeah,
Alan?
of course. Yep.
It's really important for people that already started using Teams, because a lot of people jump into the Teams and the SharePoint without really knowing what they're getting into. So sometimes we need to take a step back and say, okay, we need some policies and procedures and kind of go back and change the way that the default settings work. So it's really good for people that are even actively using, not just starting. So
yeah, that's
kind of for
very
everybody.
good point for sure. And we and Jolynn helps us sometimes with these situations where we have clients that have gotten a little bit farther down the road and now want to take a step back. So that's a really excellent point. And sort of a last minute question here. Paul had one, so let's see if we can just give him a quick answer here. So Paul says, how does the window snapping work if you have multiple monitors?
Very good question. You can still snap to other monitors, but you have to be careful when you get over to that side of that screen. When you try and snap one to the left, and if I'm going to the right on my bigger monitor, it's not going to snap to the right because it's going on to that second monitor. Okay, so your left-right doesn't work the same if you have two separate monitors. So you're going to have to try that, because how as soon as you get to the right side when you're trying to go to the other monitor, there isn't a stopping point where it says, oh, I'm going to stop and snap this. What you want to do, you can't just drag and drop them. Use hesitate on the restore maximize window, your icon at the top right, to use your layouts instead. Okay, good question.
All right, I think that's going to do it for this session. Thanks, Jacob and Jolynn, and we'll see you all back here in November.
Sounds good. Thanks, everybody.
Have a good one, guys.
Bye.